One small
Can
word.
we
Rightio, I think we'll get underway. Looks like we have everyone ready to start online and just about everyone in the room as well. So welcome everybody, and an important occasion today when we get to discuss the Korowai evaluation report. So we'll begin with the karakia. Tue ke runga, tue ke raro, tue ke waho, tue ke roto, tue ki te here tangara, ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao, humie, huie, paeki e. Thanks everyone. Now Jasmine, I'm going to hand over to you if that's okay, and we'll have some introductions and kick us off. We are excited to get underway.
Kia ora. Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Yes, it's exciting to be at this stage in the process. So this session is to introduce the evaluation report, which is based on ORC's participation in Te Korowai, which was formerly known as CouncilMark. This is LGNZ's performance development program for councils. So ORC's involvement in the process began in earnest around June, July last year with a comprehensive information gathering exercise. And then in September, we had a visit from our independent assessors who came here to meet with staff, councillors, iwi partner representatives and stakeholders. So today we have with us David Moore, Tony Kennelly and Elka Thompson. So David and Tony are the independent assessors who many of you met in September, and they're here. This is an opportunity for the authors to introduce the report, to highlight some of the key themes from their evaluation and to enable councillors to raise questions directly with the authors prior to the paper being considered by council at the meeting this afternoon. We also have Elka Thompson joining us. Elka is the program manager for Te Korowai. She won't comment on the evaluation itself. That's from the independent evaluation board, but she can answer any questions related to process around Te Korowai. So I would like to extend a very warm welcome to David, Tony and Elka, and I will hand over to them now.
Thank you, Jasmine. Morena koutou.
Morena.
Oh, I don't know whether it's good morning or good afternoon, but I think it's good morning still. But thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Just before we, start with a short presentation of what we found, I'd just like to thank Richard and Jasmine and the team down there. In terms of these reviews, they do fall quite heavily on the executive to pull together the material, and this was a particularly tumultuous review with rain storms interfering with the visit to the point that we extended half a day. I think Tony got stranded in Christchurch for half a day. So not only do you have the pressure of the review and everybody has a strong desire to perform, even though it's a kind of improvement process, we also had the chaos of the visit. So just to acknowledge that and thank everybody for pulling through. And I think we got a very kind of strong view of the organisation. And look, the first thing I'd say is of the various regional councils that I've worked with, I was pleased to have been to a few others prior to getting to Otago. And it gave me a kind of a clearer reference point for, kind of what to see and what to expect. There's no doubt that, Otago Regional Council is, in mid-step and growing its capability and capacity. It's gone from something which, was probably at the minimum to, something more towards what's acceptable in terms of capability, particularly in terms of building up the science capability, the environmental monitoring capability, and also, developing up its regulatory toolkit. So just to acknowledge that There's a huge amount of work in doing that. The organisation has grown like topsy. And the question for us is whether you've kind of got the bones, the backbone to do it. And institutionally, you know, you have. You know, I think simplifying the rating base helped enormously. The focus on enterprise systems, the HR capacity, all of that looked pretty good. There was also, we observed that there was probably a class-leading activity in terms of the way you're working with the local landholders, for instance, around winter feeding. You know, that the job of a regulator is to, you know, make sure that things happen in the right way, but they also need to be able to get on with people. And, you know, the staff had clearly gone all out to, you know, kind of run sessions, you know, provide maps, you know, simplify the consenting process and be active in minimising the disruption to business. So I thought that was particularly impressive. You know, there are a number of other bits and pieces which we could go into, and they're littered through the report. You know, the harbour masters, you know, very busy. You seem to be getting on top of the bus issues in Queenstown as much as anyone can get on top of Queenstown. So the platform is there and being established. I think also the relationship with iwi was interesting to observe. You know, my Mariah's Otago, but it's always had a different feel from other iwi, and partly that's just, you know, capacity. You know, Otago doesn't have that much capacity, and particularly around Otago. So that, you know, I put that into the kind of development category for everybody. In terms of, you know, kind of the top level concerns, I'll throw it open to Tony to correct me both on the good points and the points to look out for. The key thing for me was in some regional councils, you can get a good feeling for the state of the environment, you know, and they have a kind of vehicle often called the state of environment, which is pulled together with the other environmental agencies, and which gives you a very kind of comprehensive view of what your baseline is. For you, it sits in a number of documents. You can go on the website and have a look at air quality, or you go somewhere for other bits and pieces, but it didn't really give you a strong sense of the baseline for Otago, and, you know, that could be, you know, very useful, you know, for you. And the second part of that is we found it really difficult to get a sense of where the different catchments were. Now, some of that is because some of your catchments, like Clutha, are massive, but some of it is because people may not have been thinking about, you know, integration of, you know, pest management, border management, etc., etc. So the, you know, kind of a catchment focus for other regional councils has been very useful, and the catchments all exhibit very different qualities. I think the Catlins is the first catchment off the ground, and the Catlins is, you know, particularly special. You know, it has iconic landscapes, but it's also quite small. So I think catchment management will be a thing of the future. I think also within that, we're all facing the challenges of adaptation, and adaptation and investment is probably, you know, I think something still emerging for me in the LTP. You know, to some extent, you know, people might feel it's not wholly an issue because quite a bit of the cost of adaptation might be fired back to the people who benefit from, flood management, etc. But the issues of adaptation are pretty significant. Probably there are a couple of other second-tier issues. Like most regional councils, you're probably highly exposed to your region in terms of where you invest and how you invest. There's always an incentive for regional councils to lean into their areas, and you're not alone in this. Certainly, Bay of Plenty, I think 30% of its assets are invested locally. But it is something that you want to kind of have a think about. Other than that, probably the last point I'd make is, the strategic directions document felt good when we were talking with councillors. The further we went down the organisation, we were kind of less sure that people had a sense of strategy and direction, and a feeling that they might have been working too much in silos. But if you've grown your organisation as rapidly as you have, you do have to operate in silos. It's a question of whether you've got the right ones. So just something to reflect on there. Tony, is there anything else?
Yeah, just to confirm what you're saying, David, about the strategic directions, just that implementation level and alignment of work streams to the strategic directions being quite important. Yeah, also just the really positive iwi relationships that we observed are, in my experience, quite unusual. So just really wanted to commend you on that. Just in the governance space, we thought that there's obviously a very experienced group of elected members, but there could be some opportunities for some further professional development beyond just the induction stage. As you know, it's a rapidly changing environment with things coming down the line from central government all the time, which heavily impact on your work. So keeping across that and keeping across a kind of mutually respectful and collaborative governance working environment. What else did I want to say? There were a couple of things which stood out in particular. The resource consents team work, collaborating with the community on intensive winter grazing workshops was a real standout for me. That was really proactive and quite an impressive kind of mechanism to get compliance and community involvement. Also quite impressed with the catchment advisor role. Potentially quite a tough role, but really good to have those council representatives out in the community for each catchment, kind of understanding what's going on and providing that conduit back in to you. Yeah, and that was about all I had really, David, over and above what you've already said.
So just say, Gretchen, that you and Richard both came in for a lot of positive comment from the counterparty organisations that we talked with. It was, the personal effort that you put into relationships, I think, probably avoids quite a few issues and problems. So on that note, well done. Turned over to you for questions.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here in person, and no doubt there will be some questions. Thanks for all that feedback. It's really useful to have not only the places where we're doing well, but also the ones that we can improve. That's something we're always really keen to hear about as governors as well, and especially, as you say, as we've grown so much, we too from here. So yeah, thanks for all those comments. Are there any questions? Tom?
Yeah, thank you for the report. Just looking at the area of improvements that you've got, and at the top of the list was to provide a statement of the environment versus stock take for the environment in Otago. Is other councils are doing this, are they? And are there any good examples? How often would you do this? Is it a sort of an annual thing or sort of every 3 or 4 years? How do you see it actually improving how we run this council?
I sent through an example, which was the Waikato Regional Council's Statement of the Environment. It's quite useful to see. They're all at different stages of evolution. We do comment on Waikato's that they needed to focus more on biodiversity, for instance, which they agreed with, and they were going to reshape into their next statement. Part for them was they didn't have enough information to include it, but they recognised that it was important. Yeah, so what they do is they provide, kind of it's the kind of way that you can make a statement about what you're regulating, and from there that provides kind of a baseline for how you take decisions and how you can signal issues. So, for instance, in Waikato, they foreshadowed quite a number of adaptation issues. Likewise, our hazards environment in New Zealand is, to be honest, having just worked with Met Service, NIWA, and recently with the insurers, our hazards and profile is awful by global standards. We're probably up in the top tier of risky countries, and it's something that we don't kind of fully acknowledge, and are really just starting to, as we start to see these heavy weather events happening more and more frequently, but also it can be a way of highlighting issues in waterways, whether it's clean water or water allocation issues. It's a way of providing a kind of almost like a balance sheet of the environment.
So,
I personally,
do you see it as informing the 10-year plan, the long-term plan? Is it something
yes,
that you would do before you actually commence your long-term planning?
I would do one continuously, because they are forever evolving, and yes, it wouldn't inform the long-term plan. Long-term plans are, propelled by their timetable, so there's not much you can do about that. You have to work with the best information that you've got.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Wilson.
If I'm looking at page, the second areas of improvement, which I think is under financial, governance, leadership and strategy. And I just want to, just looking at your areas of improvement, it's page 197 on our diligent agenda. Where I'm coming from is I find the work programs which are in the annual plan light on. They've got some actions in there, but they don't have specific numbers beside them. And I'm just wondering where you're going to with better, understanding of any additional different work OIC needs to undertake or cease to undertake to achieve its strategic goals. So when we have our work programs in our annual plan, I'm asking of you, how would you do that differently to inform the sort of things that you've told us to do here?
I think your question is about prioritisation of work effort.
It's that, and also the clarity and transparency, what I question, but I'm not quite sure if that's where you're going, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. So yeah, I'm just wondering how people do this well, and because long-term plans will change and our priorities will change, and it's good to size it back and say what have we taken out and what have we put in. We do that, but we don't put numbers beside it, and we don't necessarily it's at a very high level.
How to do it? what I might do is take you out of a regional council setting. We've just reviewed the regulator in the energy sector.
Yeah.
And what we suggested for them to do, they've been, reasonably fixated on their statutory objectives.
Yeah.
I think this is always a bit confusing for regulators, that there are a number of ways that you can achieve those objectives. And there are a number of things that you have to prioritise, and how you prioritise might be by strategic alignment, making sure that if you've got your strategic directions right, that you can line up your work programs against that. It might be by questions of emphasis of the organisation, that at this point, the organisation needs to do whatever in terms of its planning environment. The land and water, it's clearly a major issue for you, and I'll say that and then walk away from it quickly, because I suspect it's probably half your agenda. But in most organisations, we would encourage them. We've worked with recently EPA, not this Environmental Protection Authority, the Electricity Authority, and so on. What we encourage regulators to do is to have a set of decision criteria that they work through to see what they prioritise and what they don't. And with some, it becomes quite clear what needs to happen, and they tend to be go into tier 1 type issues. Others, tend to become, business as usual, and there are occasionally things that you can stop. For instance, for an electricity authority, one of the criteria would be about long-term efficiency of the energy market, and a real challenge in New Zealand's energy system is around systems resilience, particularly as we head into distributed energy sources. So that then makes you think about whether your code and rule book is up to date. So that's the way that I would do it. I would have explicit decision criteria and just test everything that comes through the council papers against those.
Thank you.
Councillor Weir.
Yeah, so I think most of the questions, I guess I would have are more questions for ourselves to answer. I just had a tiny little just on that very first page of the report, and the agenda says that we're the second largest region in the country. Just in the interest of accuracy, as much as I would love for that to be the case, I think Southlands, if we're just doing it by area, I'm not sure what that was being measured by, is around 20 kilometres squared larger than us or something. Not to knock us down a peg or anything, but
Yeah, we'll take it, but yeah, I think you might be right there, Councillor Weir. Yeah. Right, any other questions then? Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, it's probably just a week under financial planning and reporting. You've said that there's a sharp increase in external borrowings to retain current levels of service and infrastructure from 25 million to 105 million. But that was actually port borrowings that increased. Yeah, I think our actual borrowings are similar to what they historically are. So we've entered a facility with we've assisted the port with a facility through LGFA, but not it's for their use. I think we did extend our limit from 25 to 50 million, but haven't used that as such.
Yep, that's just.
And just to say that the rate increases that you see washing through that LTP and the investment profile that you have, I think, are probably quite tenuous. The you might see larger rate increases, you know, if you decide to invest further in adaptation, for instance. Yeah, I think for you it's you know, kind of moving into catchment management and having those close local community discussions about all sorts of things, from, you know, biodiversity through to flood management. You know, that you know, there will be a, you know, kind of a range of issues which could be quite impactful on the cost structure of the regional council. And just to say, we've seen rate increases across the country with regional councils, and it's unsurprising.
You're right there, Councillor.
Oh, yeah,
Malcolm,
but
we're making a different
well, I
point.
understand that, but you're just referring to that debt level on your report, that you're saying we've increased our borrowings from 25 million to 105 million. But it was actually the port. All we've done is create a facility for the port. So their work, that's completely separate to what we're doing as an entity.
Through us.
Yeah. Yep.
Still on our box, yeah.
Well, yeah, I know it is, but it's not reflected in any, it hasn't reflected any rate impost for anyone.
No, it's a funny arrangement. It took me a bit of time to get my head around it. They're building a building as a kind of property development company, and you providing the finance for it at a slightly lower rate. The only question that I had in that was the question of becoming overinvested in the Dunedin region. You're at low risk earthquake risk. If you were high risk earthquake risk, and if this were Wellington, where I'm sitting, I'd say that you had an existential threat to your balance sheet. So just something to think about. I think rather than the debt is the question of you know, how you invest. And it's slightly awkward for you. I didn't come down to a kind of firm direction on it. If you had 100 million plus in that investment fund, I forget what it was 20 to 30 or something from memory. If you had 100 million, then you could easily separate it out and manage it independently and put, you know, kind of you know, some guardrails around where and how you invest more easily than you can with, you know, this smaller investment. But the no doubt for regional councils, those assets are vital. I forget what you were getting out of the port, but I think it's 15, 20 million. But it is a very specific asset.
Thanks, yeah, we can have a think about that. There's a few issues that have been raised there. I think Councillor Malcolm was making a slightly different point, but that's okay. And also the Chalmers property spread of investment, I guess, is another point. And some of it's in Dunedin, some of it isn't in Dunedin. We do have quite a spread throughout the country, but that's, good points, is anyone wanting to talk about this particular point? Okay, so Andrew, you were first.
It was just with regards to on page 14, and it's just this exact point as you say, Madam Chair. Consider, this is areas of improvement, page 14, consider grouping and managing all investments together in an arm's length council-owned investment vehicle. And I just wondered, I can understand that direction for TA, but with the regional council and with the ownership of Port Otago, who have a property development company as an offshoot, have a managed fund, as you've referred to, 27 mil or something that's managed independently. There's not probably a lot of property portfolio beyond that. And I just wondered the basis for that recommendation to improve returns and to be more efficient with their assets or whatever. I just wondered whether was that perhaps an over a recommendation that when you look at our layout and setup, we're actually doing pretty well in that space, I would have thought, but you're suggesting perhaps comparing us with other councils, we're not doing well in that space?
No, it's more probably my point of reference there. Many years ago, I worked with Naitahu on the investment subcommittee to take it from what was essentially a property development company to a kind of proper endowment fund management, and that meant making sure you had the right asset classes, that you're involved in alternative asset investments and so on and so forth. But that was partly to deal with the risk of overexposure to property. Property is still important, particularly to an iwi, because you usually have the first right of call on any government asset sales. So I'm not saying that that you should change it. What I'm saying is that you need to be aware that you've got a lot of your investments, focused in a reasonably narrow area and very geographic centric, particularly around the port company.
Okay, thank you. Tom.
Yeah, just probably following up more on this one, actually. Did you, in your investigation or your study of ORC, did you actually look at the port? Because they have a diverse portfolio of property through their Chalmers property. They have a lot in Hamilton and Auckland. So did you take that into consideration? I mean, the port is actually around about its value is around about 700 million on our balance.
Yes, they're massive. Yeah, and look, ports do diversify. I mean, Port of Tauranga owns the North Port, I think, from memory, and has an investment in a large inland port in Ruakura, and all property opportunities, kind of spawn more opportunities. I just flagging it as an area to think about, and if you're comfortable, with that, then that's good. But and as I say, if you had more money than that, 25 to 30 million, then I would probably suggest that you set it up as an independent investment company and have a look at it through that lens. I'm sitting on the fence as to whether it's worth it.
Richard,
Just in terms of context, so Korowai obviously looks at a massive range of things right across our business, including our financials we're discussing at the moment, but not in the sort of detail that we would go into if this table was interested in exploring some of these things. It's really just to put some ideas on the table. Some of them council will agree with, and some you have a different opinion based on the level of information from being around this table. So they're not right or wrong. They're opinions that are expressed by the assessment panel for us to consider in terms of some things we might want to look at. And what we'll explain this afternoon when we get to the report is that we'll have an exercise, as with all these reviews we've been through, to go through and prioritise things and bring them back to council and talk about what's the most important thing to look at. So I guess what I'm saying is not necessarily look at this as a right or wrong. It's a perception based on the information that was provided and what was it wasn't a deep dive that we would do. And we will get the chance to consider whether we choose to take up that action and do some further work on it, or that we just choose to prioritise other things because our feeling, or your feeling as a council table, is that we're okay in that space. And so that's sort of a bit of context for the report, and I guess the way that we will be looking to use it as staff to bring it to the governance table.
Richard, that may be, but this has made the paper already. And I actually don't feel convinced that it's an accurate assessment of the financial management around our investments.
That's fine, I'm just giving you the context
So,
of it.
so yeah, but it has hit the paper, that's what I'm saying.
Having
So-
worked in Dunedin for many years, I do concede that you have a very active local paper. In fact, the only active, kind of investigative paper in the country left. And all I'd say is if you feel we haven't got it right, then absolutely go and contest it. But your Otago papers, paper is doing its job.
Oh, okay, right. We're in a public workshop. That's all good. We're having a good discussion here. So what I'm just gonna bring us back to the purpose of today, I suppose. So we're having a workshop here. We were having presented the report, and we've got a chance to question about that, and we're having a good go at that. That's fantastic. And then from there, Richard's just talked about some of the follow-up as well that we'll need to do as a council as well. So perhaps towards the end of this workshop, if Richard or the team next steps as well, which will prepare us well then for having this debate again in public about what to do next and receiving the report. So yeah, we need to come back to that, but about how we make this as useful as possible as well. And taking on board Richard's points as well, and also what David said as well, which is that so yeah, we're noting some points here for us to consider. Yep. Right. Any other questions then? While we've got that opportunity. Yeah, Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, you made a comment, and I just would like you to expand on it under areas for improvement on that investment part, and where you said that make investment management and risks more transparent. And I'm just wondering where you've seen we're not making that transparent enough now. What particularly stood out is
The fund managers often, kind of produce a little report, and it might be sitting there somewhere already, and we may not have seen it. Just showing, what asset classes they're invested in, where the geography is, what the rate of return is, what are you benchmarking yourself against, and what's the performance of that investment. You feel comfortable with it, but I have no idea about its kind of relative performance or its relative risk profile. So just to signal to and to back up, Richard's points, this is a point to kind of have a think about rather than a suggestion that it's not performing well. And something for you to feel comfortable about. What I would say is that, I think I wouldn't over focus on it. I would have put it as a tier 2 issue in terms of the main issues. I think the core of our recommendations really sit around the third pillar, how you deliver, and, the kind of the core environmental and science, capability and functionality, which you're working hard to grow.
yeah, and probably why I'm saying that, being tied up in finance and audit and risk, and where we get extensive coverage of how our fund is working, and right down to the nth detail if we decide to read the whole lot, which we do. It sort of reflects that. We've continually asked and been continually given more transparency on that, especially in the last 5 years that I've been involved. So that sort of statement, I'd have to, and it has been highlighted that we're not getting, I believe we certainly are getting the right information, and the staff are giving us the information that we require at the particular time. So I'm just trying to find the basis of that comment so I can investigate that from behind. But if you have in fact seen what we do get at audit and risk and finance, and for the other investments that I have historically looked after, I would probably have to have a conversation around. I think that's plenty that we get. Yeah, I'll leave it at that, but I'm just, yeah.
Comment, perhaps, yep, okay, doesn't look like we'll have an answer at this point, but yeah, we can look into that. Councillor Callaghan?
Look, I actually agree with where the report has arrived at when it comes to our investments. If it's just taken at an absolute glance, you've got $700 or $800 million worth of assets, and we've only just arrived at a $20 million dividend from it. So when you look at it, when you delve right into the trading aspects and everything else, and it's property development and blah, blah, blah. But what this group has done is just taken a very high level look at, well, that's what it's worth, and that's what you get. And if they were doing this a few years ago, it was way more pathetic than that. So I agree with the point, and we should be year by year re-evaluating where we sit with this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Callaghan. Always take something from a review, definitely constructively. Any other questions?
Next steps.
Sorry, yeah, next steps is
Yeah, there's more
important.
important.
There's a lot in here, so yeah, we're obviously only touching on this, but we've all read it and we've taken on board. And yeah, we've had good reporting as well locally too, so good to know that there's a lot of relevance in the job that we do to our local communities and interest. And yeah, it's up to us to ensure that we really take on board some of these messages, have a really good think about it, and ensure that yeah, we're doing the best job that we possibly can, and evolving into that over time as well, knowing that not everything can be done immediately, and also the important point that was made around that there's going to be more information out there, and some of these points are just for us to have a think about more so than definitely need to do them immediately as well. It was, yeah, good to see there was a lot of strength coming through in governance as well, and to me that reflected some really good systems I think that we've tried to put in place, and Councillor Malcolm spoke about some of them, like the audit and risk, and just the transparent processes that we've tried to establish. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good that's come out of this as well. So well done to everyone. Are there any other comments that you wanted to make while you've got the opportunity, David, Tony, Elke as well?
Kia ora, great, Ken. I just would like to take the opportunity also to thank your team. I've been working many months with Andrew and then Jasmine, and been on site, seeing your dedicated staff, and it's great to have a council that takes up the challenge. So really excited also to be at this point. And in terms of next steps, that's where the real magic happens, so to say. And I'm looking forward to staying involved with your team to just see how we can progress this report. Ngā mihi, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you. Who wants to kick us off on next steps? Is that you, Jasmine? Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Look, any organisation, when you review it, including a recent internal review we pushed through in Superior of our own platform, you will find points to improve on. What I was particularly struck by was the rapid growth in science capability and environmental monitoring. And that will give you a kind of clearer line of sight, as you develop into that kind of, whether you call it a statement around the environment. I think wouldn't underestimate how hard you have to pedal in a regional council when you're basically doubling the size of it and putting whole new capabilities in place with monitoring systems, information systems, etc. That's a big deal. So all credit to you for doing that, and thank you for the opportunity to come and visit you.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you. So the next step in this process, we had hoped to have a development workshop to start looking at an action plan and start prioritising which recommendations in the report we wanted to focus on and how we might tackle those. Initially, we'd been looking at early March for that. However, I've been working with Elka on trying to figure out what would work best for our council and how we might do that, both with governance and with ELT. Also to consider is there's been a number of recent reviews over the last few years. Council already has a lot on the boil in terms of improvement projects and which things we're going to tackle. So making sure that any action plan that is developed is done in alignment with the business business improvement framework, and that we approach it in a really strategic way. So I don't have firm details yet in terms of a development workshop with councillors, just that we're in the planning stages of that. Anything to add? Thank you.
Richard, did you want to make any sort of general comments? Sorry, while you're doing something. No, you're all good. Okay. Rightio, well, we might be finishing off early soon, but if anyone would like to have any further comments or thoughts on how we progress this, but it probably is quite simple. The next stage will be drawing out those priorities that we're wanting to work on and ensure that they are embedded through the organisation. Now, Tim, I did have a conversation with you about your thoughts on the importance of doing that, and yeah, just that was something you strongly believed in, I think. So maybe you might want to say something.
Oh, look, just this exercise is useful, and it's useful in identifying sort of targets for improvement, which we have. I mean, Richard, you have in your report a report on our achievement against our milestones, and I just think that there are aspects of this report that could be added into those milestones that you're reporting, so that we keep a focus on it all the time. Well, that's just the conversation we had over a cup of tea or something, wasn't it? But but we can't lose sight of these improvement targets. We need to have, if we're going to implement them, we need to be reporting on them regularly so we can see what's happening.
So that's certainly, I think, one thing. What we're doing at the moment is balancing a number of recommendations from a number of different reports and working out what's the most important, what's going to deliver the best, the biggest change, whether it's value or whatever it might be. So incorporating, I guess, an overall suite of those things between the efficiency review, facility audit, the Te Korowai report, into what effectively becomes an improvement program, because we won't be able to do everything from every report all at once. It would, we just don't have the resources to do that. So it's about being strategic and the ones that will deliver the best bang for buck and prioritising those, and they could form part of that reporting.
Awesome. Ivan.
Yeah, I just want to focus on, I thought was a very good point in here on page 200, and it comes under the efficiency and value for money. And I'd probably just like to leave with that thought that rates are forecast to increase by around 10% per annum over the period of the long-term plan, with no material increase in level of service. So I think that's, to me, if we are going to concentrate on something, I'd be concentrating on page 200 and the wording around that. That's probably where I'd leave it at this stage. That was good reading.
Thank you. Councillor Laws.
Well, can I ask the authors on that issue, please, to expand on what they mean by that?
Well, I'm just looking at the specific of the centres with no material increase and level of service in brackets. There's a clarification no increase in flood and drainage, and some increase in public transport, and the new environment fund, which is put in place to basically help NGOs to come together to talk about issues that would sit behind the catchment. I think it's the if you wanted to get deeper into it, you'd have to say in terms of levels of service, they're usually described as a percentage, likely protection levels. So you talk about, you know, kind of 1 in a 50-year flood, 1 in a 200-year flood, and things like that. The only point I'd make about that is I don't think our hazards landscape is that well known. So the level of service that you might have now, or that you think you have, may not be the level of service given the current hazards profile of New Zealand. So for instance, GNS a decade ago realised that we were probably going to have larger earthquakes than thought previously, and upped the kind of the engineering calculations for earthquake-prone buildings. With flood management, it was pretty bare bones.
Sorry, I don't think you've understood the question. You're off on a tangent somewhere. So let's bring you back to the question, shall we? Which is, what do you mean when you say that there are 10% rate increases with no defined level of discernible level of service?
Increase.
Or increased level of service. Are you suggesting, is that a criticism? Is that a
It's
suggestion?
a comment. It's a comment.
Was that an observation based upon fact?
That's a fact.
I
We've
think
got
what he
10%.
said there was some brackets there which outlined what he thought might be tangible levels of service that might be being measured against, which is flood and drainage, public transport, and the new environment fund, which is some of our levels of service of what we do, but there's quite a few other ones. And those are real common ones to focus on, I think, and because the community sees them and they're quite tangible and they're quite concrete, I guess. But regional councils do a whole lot of things that aren't so easy to spot, and the levels of, I don't know, the levels of service are not just those ones. So yeah, I think we're having a bit of confusion on what we're at. Yeah, it's a good question, Council Laws, I think, in terms of what we mean there. It's hard for us to pick that, but at the moment, we are taking the report as it's written, I guess, and we're having a brief discussion on it. We'll have an opportunity to have a real in-depth look at, is that correct? And how do we feel about that? And I think it's valuable for us to do that. So that's good. Thanks for pointing that out. That's correct. Probably in terms of tangible things that people can see on the ground, it may not be all that obvious, although there is quite a works program in those areas as well that I'm aware of. So that's, yep, but we can deep dive into those ourselves and have a good think about it. I don't know if we can achieve that right at the second. Thank you. Okay, so sorry, that was a good point though. We're wrapping up. We've got 5 more minutes. We've done most of the questions. Is there anyone, while we've got this opportunity though, with a really pressing question they've still got? We've talked about steps from here. We can wrap up in a minute. Looks like we're pretty much done, I think. Councillor Wilson, you've got a final thought.
When you just made an interesting comment that you're aware of it, and I presume that we could all be aware of it. It is information that's been shared, and I just want to make sure that that's what you were meaning.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
And while we're in public workshop, that's right. There is some works program that we're all aware of going on in flood resilience. There is concrete works going on that does improve levels of service. So, and I think we all know there are programs there that are in our long-term plan and annual plan. So yeah, Yep. But yeah, thanks, councillor Wilson, that's right, it's not something that I'm especially aware of and no one else is, yep. Okay, so thank you once again to everyone that was involved in this. As has been pointed out, it's a very extensive process that has gone on. Staff particularly have provided some really in-depth reports that sit behind this. It's independent, which is really, really valuable. We are allowed to question it, we're allowed to spark some conversations that might be that challenge us as well, and that's really, really positive and healthy for us to move forward from. So I think we will all gain a whole heap from that. And yeah, we're gonna do a lot more work identifying what the actual priorities are, and then as we've said, combining a whole lot of other reviews that we've done recently as our organisation has grown to ensure that we're giving the best value for money that we possibly can be. And yeah, I just want to send a big thanks out particularly to the authors of the report. Great to have you here today, and to all our staff who've been involved, and our councillors as well. And of course, we've also involved interviews with stakeholders, iwi partners, so that we can get a good picture of where we're at. So thanks everyone. We're going to close this workshop off with karakia as well. Right, kia tau, te rangi Māori e, ki runga I ngā iwi o te ao. Thank you very much. We're done. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Ka kite.
Ka kite.